A few years ago, I was backpacking around South America, and I kind of washed up in Ushuaia, Tierra del Fuego. It's the southernmost city in the world. It's on the shores of the Beagle Channel, and I kind of started wondering while I was there, Beagle Channel, Beagle ship, Charles Darwin's ship, and I realized, I don't actually know anything about Charles Darwin and where he went when he was here. I didn't know anything about his travels. And there's an English language bookstore in Ushuaia. So I went into this bookstore, I found a copy of The Voyage of the Beagle, which is Charles Darwin's book. And I started reading and I was completely blown away because I'd always thought of Charles Darwin as this kind of boring old English scientist, the guy with the huge white beard. And I'm reading this book, and the book's written by this 20-something guy who's climbing up mountains and tearing through jungles and exploring and labeling this continent in a way that's really familiar to a backpacker today. And I was really interested in this. I kind of was reading, I got this urge, well, I'd like to see all these other places he went, and what were they like then, what are they like now, and where's his story take us today? And I kept reading it, finished up his part about exploring South America, and after he'd done that, he went off to the Galapagos, and this is the part everybody knows about, right? He went to the Galapagos, he studied the really small finches, the birds, and then he discovered evolution. And that's a great story, and unfortunately it's false. It's a really overblown thing about him. When Darwin was in the Galapagos, he was all about reptiles. That was where he was at, is the lizards. And specifically, he was all about the marine iguana. He spent a bunch of time studying these swimming iguanas. He chased them around, and he threw them off his boat, and he cut them up to see what they were eating. And on one of his days, as he's cruising around the islands, he's like, well, how well do these iguanas swim? And naturally, if you're an English scientist, you would figure that question out, and you would answer it by going and chasing the iguana and picking it up and throwing it in the ocean, which is exactly what Darwin did. And if you were a really good scientist, which Charles Darwin was, you would repeat. And so this is what Darwin did for an entire day. Grab iguana, toss, repeat. You like that. I know you like that. So I think the really interesting thing about this book is that it dives into these places that were so significant to Darwin that, a lot of books about Charles Darwin, about science, don't really get into how important place was. And I thought this was the great thing about Darwin. It's so cool. He is running through the jungle, and he's hacking at vines and creepers, and he's chasing weird bugs, and he's, riding around studying cowboys and Indians. And it's like, you don't hear these stories, the background of science, that much. And it's really cool. It wasn't like he just showed up at the Galapagos and he saw the finches and that was that. He had his idea. It was this whole experience, the full 5 years of waking up every morning and being curious about the world and going out to see what was out there and running around doing crazy stuff, rolling boulders off cliffs just to make noise. And it's just this total joyous expression of curiosity that I thought was really cool, and that I think is undertold. That you don't hear enough about Darwin doing this stuff. And so I really wanted to present that side of him and really update these places that were so cool to him, that meant so much, and that taught him so much, and what they're like now, and tell these stories that Darwin told them in the 1830s. But this is the amazing thing, that this is what really struck me. You sit in a hostel dorm room right now, you sit in your bunk bed, you listen to other people telling stories about Patagonia, about the jungles in Brazil, about the desert in Chile. They're telling the same stories that Darwin told 170 years ago. And I thought that was really neat, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with this book.